Russell, and I'm a third-year law school student at George Mason University Antonin Scalia Law School. I currently serve as a member of Equal Justice Works National Advisory Committee, and I help develop new ways to champion public service on law school campuses and encourage more law students to pursue their public interest goals. I'm thrilled to welcome you to the conference and career fair. I hope you're taking advantage of everything the conference and career fair has to offer, from meeting and learning about hundreds of public interest employers to attending workshops and panel discussions on topics like racial justice, housing, immigration, and environmental law. It's a great opportunity to network with others in the space and hear insights from public interest leaders. Speaking of public interest leaders, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this conversation with Ami Dar, founder of Idealist, and David Stern, Executive Director of Equal Justice Works, working with us here. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure. And Ella, thank you for your service to Equal Justice Works and for moderating this panel.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, to start us off, can you both tell us a bit about your early days and interest in the public sector? Ami, why don't you start?
Oh my God, my early days. I have been doing this forever. I started Idealist almost 25 years ago. So before that, I guess there was not much. I dropped out of high school and then there was some stuff and then I did this, pretty much. So it's been an obsession for a long time. How do you bring sort of good people together with good things to do? And that led to Idealist. And then I met David, and then here we are.
Wonderful. What about you, David?
Well, so I grew up in a family that had very progressive ideas, and I went to law school, clerked for a couple of judges, and then went to a civil rights law firm called Bernabé and Katz. Debbie Katz actually is the lawyer who represented Dr. Blasey Ford in the Kavanaugh hearings. But it was an intense experience. We were outmatched completely. It was David and Goliath struggles, but really important work to advance civil rights. And so I was really bitten by the bug of doing public interest work. But when I heard about this opportunity to mobilize an army of lawyers to go and do public interest work, I was highly motivated. I said, that's what we need. So that's how
great.
I got started. Yeah.
That's great. You two have an interesting story about how you met. Can you speak about how you were introduced to each other?
Sure, I'm happy to. So we started Idealist, as I said, in '95. It became known relatively quickly. It was a tiny site at first, out of my bedroom, and then a little office. And after a while, we started allowing organizations to post jobs there. And then one day we got this call or this email from a consultant, I think it was, that David had hired. David had sort of the incredible insight of hiring someone. David thought there should be on the web a place for nonprofits and people to find jobs and connect. And so as far as I know, he hired this consultant to go look at what was being done. And she went back to him and said, there's a thing called Idealist that's the best. And so they reached out to us and they encouraged us to apply for this grant that the Stern Family Fund was doing. It was called the Pioneer Grant. It was $100,000. And I had to go down to DC, and I didn't know if to wear a suit or not. I had to go to DC and go to an interview with David and some sort of veterans from this whole movement. And that was it. That's how we met. It was, the dream of every nonprofit is to have a funder reach out of the blue and say, we want to support you. And it was amazing.
Yes, yeah, we all dream of that.
Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about this. My father, when he passed away, he left money in his estate, and we had a small family foundation, and we put the money into that, and we created a program called the Public Interest Pioneer Program. The other people who were on the board, in addition to my wife, was Ralph Nader, Sid Wolf, who ran something called the Public Health Research Group, Public Citizen Health Research Group, and Alan Morrison, who ran Public Citizen Litigation Group. I mean, these people are absolutely the best in the business when it comes to public interest law and public interest movements more generally. And they said, we all know that there are people who are experienced leaders who have phenomenal ideas, and yet they can never get the critical mass of money to get those ideas off the ground. They can get $15,000 here and $10,000 over there, but they can never get the critical mass to really make it happen. So we created this program to basically encourage innovation and to be able to provide that seed money to really get some of these social entrepreneurs off the ground. And when we heard about Ami, And again, it was a highly competitive process. I mean, I have to tell you, there were 500 applicants. We made the barriers very low. People would just submit a one-page, concept paper. But when Ami came in, he really distinguished himself in terms of kind of this force multiplier. We had this idea of how to connect lots of do-gooders with opportunities for them to put their passion to practice. And it was just such a brilliant idea. All of us, it was at the time really not much more than a concept, but again, his thinking, his vision, it was just so compelling. And so just as Ami said, we had these $100,000 grants that we would give to launch these programs. And it just, again, of all the things that we gave money to, this is one that probably has multiplied more than anything else. we funded some great pioneers, I will tell you, but Ami really has knocked the ball out of the park.
David, when you're done with equal justice work, we're hiring you as a spokesperson. It's done, basically. You don't have to worry about your future. It is done.
Thank you, Ami.
It's amazing to hear both sides of the story, kind of see how it feels to see grants, but also how to, to give them out for purposes that are important. So Ami, you told us a little bit about inspiration behind the Idealist. Did you achieve what you set out to achieve, or did you create something completely different in the end?
Well, I would say both. When we started, we never intended for this to be known so much as a job site the way it is today. That happened over time. The interest was there, and so we, went and pursued that. The fundamental idea of connecting people that want to do good with ways to do that, I think, that's a ongoing process forever. In many ways, I feel that I'm a late bloomer, and so some days I feel I'm just getting started. I got married for the first time 5 years ago. I had a baby 2 years ago.
Congratulations on both.
Awesome.
And so I have this sense that life is just starting, even though this is already mostly white. So there's still a lot to do in the world, as we see in the papers every day. And so as long as I don't get bored, I'm still here for a while, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's, a great transition into what I'm going to ask you about next. And that is, how can we make the world a fairer and more just place? We've seen over the last few years that many organizations are being intentional about ramping up their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And in what ways are your organizations advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion?
David, want to take it first?
Sure, I'll start.
Please.
So this is certainly both a topic of our time, but it's well overdue. I mean, we should have been talking about this for my entire life. Now it's front and center, and I am really proud to lead the efforts at Equal Justice Works. We have both a board committee that's focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion, and culture for the entire organization and from a really high level altitude, but also realizing that the decisions they make have implications. And so that it ought to be front and center in a conversation that's focused, whether it's on nominations and governance or the way in which board meetings are conducted. I mean, there's just so much oversight and work that they can contribute. And we also are doing work inside the organization. We have a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, council, that we have a group of people who are helping to advance that, both in terms of educating our staff, making us more aware of issues, but also really having metrics and things in order to make sure that we're being very deliberate and strategic about moving the needle. It's natural to have lots of conversations, but we're also interested in really holding ourselves accountable and making sure that we're actually doing things better. And so again, I could really go into a lot of details, but we're spending a lot of time and focus on it. And it's super gratifying for me. I mean, I really love it. It's one of my favorite activities that I get to do. I'm learning a ton, but I also know how much further we have to go. I feel like we're still in the very beginning of our journey. And especially as a white privileged male, I'm spending a lot of time thinking about myself and my own values and my own upbringing and the unconscious bias that I have that is always present, and just making that a little bit more aware is a good thing.
Wonderful. What about Idealist and you personally?
Yeah, personally, I think so. For us, it's two things really as an organization. One is external. So Idealist, is a place where people go to find jobs, further careers, et cetera. And so we're doing what we can to educate both, the job seeker side, if you like, and then the org side on whatever we can to, spread articles, knowledge, awareness, whatever tools we can share with people for this purpose. And then internally, we're small. We're still only, up and down, but basically right now we're 28, 29 people. And so when we hire, when we promote, we try to constantly, look for the ways to be, as diverse and as equitable. I mean, the issue of equity in terms of treating people, I think, fairly and with dignity and with respect, that has been very much with us from the very, very beginning on the best possible benefits we can have. The best. So that piece, I think, has been there. The piece about trying to diversify. And then for me, one personal sort of quest that I have, as I said earlier, sort of half jokingly, I never liked school as a kid. I dropped out of high school and I never went back. And so I think that one sort of personal obsession for me is this issue of people that, maybe did not finish high school or did not go to college or actually come from a poor background. And very often, I think sometimes in certain kind of organizations, we look at diversity, but do we really mean people who are truly not like us, who are truly not from our background, right? Who truly, so the whole issue of persuading people to reduce the need for a college degree, to eliminate it, when in fact the position doesn't need it, right? And so to reduce obstacles like that are in fact, created sometimes people just put something, college graduate. Why do you have to be a college graduate for this job? So to try to push those boundaries and really open opportunities if we possibly can.
Thank you. That both of your organizations are making wonderful progress and taking good steps to address these issues. All right, I have one last question for you both, and that is, coming from, a place that is near and dear to my heart, and that is, what advice would you share with law school students and recent graduates who are attending the conference and career fair and who share your passion for making a difference, but don't know where to start?
Ami, you want to start?
Yes, please.
I mean, I can just say something quick, which is, to quote, unfortunately, to quote Nike for a second, just do it. There's something about when people often have a big idea, a plan, a dream, there are lots of reasons and excuses that one can come up with. Let's call them reasons, to not actually get going. And for many, many, many things, imagine that you have a dream for like some kind of national mentorship program, for example. You could go and obsess for years about raising enough money to start big, or in your kitchen table at night, you could match one person with one mentee, and then also try to raise money. But in many, many, many cases, one can actually start doing the work. And the sort of obsession with fundraising, with having enough to start, that can get in the way of the actual work. You can start small. You can start with one thing. You can start with yourself and then just keep going. So that would be one piece of advice that I could give.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I would actually say I love what Ami had to say, because I think that the hurdle initially for a lot of people is, and especially for lawyers, they're like, God, we're risk averse. We don't want to do something that we're not really great at. So how dare us, go and volunteer to do something that I've never even studied that area of the law. And the reality is that the way you learn, and I really firmly believe this, is actually to get in there and start doing it. You surround yourself with other people who are more experienced, who may be able to give you some tips, tell you a little bit about how to do it, share with you some pleadings, things like that. But there's just no reason not to jump in and do it. Also, I think a lot of law students are linear thinkers. They think the path going forward is going to be like, oh, if I get this job, then I'll get this job, and I'll get it. And it just does not work that way. I will tell you, the way I landed this job was literally walking down the street, running into a guy who said, I've got the perfect job for you. And I got home and I had a telephone call waiting for me. I met up, and that's how I learned about this organization. So it's serendipitous. It happens a little differently than you might imagine. What I would say, however, is that I get a lot of calls, as you would expect, from law students who are saying, gosh, I really want to do public interest work. I'm not sure exactly what it is that I want to do, but I know I want to do good in the world. And today, more than ever, I think law students are going with intention to law school. They're going with purpose. They want to make a difference. But when they come to law school, the universe is so vast, and they can't figure out where to plug in. So one of my suggestions is always go to Idealist and start looking at different jobs and see which ones kind of resonate with you. There are jobs and there are also volunteer opportunities, but you will quickly see I don't like that one. I do like that one. And then you'll start to narrow the universe. And then I can be much more helpful. Once somebody has kind of a, this is really striking my fancy. I like this. And I can explain to you why I like it. I like the issue area. I like the fact that I won't have any contact with clients, that I get to do the forms in the background. Or another person says, I really want to have the contact with clients. So, and people saying, I want to do systemic reform or policy advocacy. I don't want to do the direct service. Each one of these things are little junctures in the public interest orbit or universe that if you can define that, that will help both you figure out what you want to pursue, but also help your friends and people who want to help you find those opportunities to help steer you and make connections so that you're able to do that. But Idealist, it happens to be a resource that I truly believe is one of those places where you can cast your line in a lot of different places and then see, oh, this is the thing that I really like, and I want to pursue that, and it helps me and many others make that connection.
That's great advice.
Can I add something else very quickly?
Yes, absolutely.
No, just if we have 10 seconds, which is that another thing I think, just to go on David's point with like specifically lawyers or attorneys, as you like to be called, this piece about the choice, I'm going to be a public interest lawyer or do some pro bono, volunteering, or I'm going to be a tax lawyer, an estate lawyer, corporate lawyer. And I think that even that distinction or that, dichotomy is not true in the sense that you can be a tax lawyer, you can be a corporate lawyer at a law firm. You can still, at a partner meeting, raise your hand and say, who's the lowest paid person in this whole company of ours? And what can we do for that lowest paid person? Can we, this person that opens the door in the morning that is making $40,000 a year, can we pay her $42,000 a year, or would that kill us? Come on. And so the ethical choice, the raising your hand and doing something courageous is always in front of you. It's very easy not to take that path in life, but that path is always there. And you don't have to make this big decision, oh, I'll sacrifice myself, I'll be, a public interest lawyer. No, you can do whatever you want and still do good every day if you want to, and not rationalize your way out of it. So on that note.
And I have one more little tidbit to add, which is I am a big believer that this is, and I, by the way, could not agree more with Ami's point about it's not an either or proposition. Too often in law school, it is, oh, you're a sellout or you're a do-gooder. And it's just not that simple. In fact, this organization is built entirely on creating a community of lawyers who care about access to justice. And they come from every part of the profession, and they come together with common purpose. And that is kind of the essence of how do you make change in the world. You have to make sure that you're not just out there on your own in isolation. So the second point is kind of related to that, which is, in my opinion, both job seeking and success in career is all about relationships. You can have a gilded resume, you can do well in your classes and all the rest of the stuff. It is the experience you have during a summer where you develop a relationship with your supervisor and they get to see your work. And then they're an ally or an asset for you when you apply for your next job, and they serve as a reference. I mean, it's all about who you know. Now, in the beginning, when you're starting off, your universe is tiny. It's just a little circle around you. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that circle has an extended circle, and then that circle has an extended circle. And so our organization has grown almost entirely because of those relationships and the fact that the universe is expanding. Each time you hit one of those orbits, you go one extension out, and then you find a whole nother group of people who can be helpful. And I just think in public interest careers, having those relationships, navigating, getting to know a lot of different people and a lot of different issues and organizations, all of those ultimately inure to your benefit when you start looking for jobs and what passions you have and how to put them to work.
That was so great, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Thank you both for joining us today. It's been super inspiring and uplifting. And thank you to all students tuning in. And to law students attending the conference and career fair, I hope you join me over the next 3 days and take this opportunity to meet with hundreds of public interest employers from across the country. I also encourage you to attend the conference sessions and workshop opportunities to learn about public interest law careers, to connect and share ideas on how you can serve your community and to build your legal skills in new and exciting ways outside of the classroom. Thank you and take care.
All right, well done, Ella. Thank you, Ami.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.